David, big news last week from a club you know well, Linfield Football Club. They have been drawn away to play Limavady United in the Irish Cup. That game's going to be shown live on the BBC iPlayer, so it's been switched from a Saturday afternoon to be played on a Friday night. The Coleraine Showgrounds, it's a Coleraine because Limavady are currently laying a 3G pitch. A lot of Linfield fans, many Linfield fans aren't happy about this, particularly the supporters clubs. Several supporters clubs have came out and said they're going to boycott the game because they are, in essence, fed up with Linfield games being switched away from Saturday at 3 o'clock to be played on a Friday night. Sometimes they've been played at other times as well. How do you react to this? Because it's a controversial topic within the Linfield support, but there seems to be a general anger within the club about how many games are being moved away from the traditional 3 p.m. kickoff.
Okay, at the risk of repeating myself again and again and again, the lifeblood of the local game, the lifeblood of the game, our supporters, are those folks who dedicate and commit themselves to following their team and to spending their hard-earned money. And, we talk about supporters, and in a conversation recently with a gentleman, he talked about how we should be looking at them not just as supporters but as customers, that we should be wanting to make sure that we give them the best experience that we possibly can. So in terms of where they come in with respect of priority, supporters are very, very much up there. But there's not a but. What I would like to say, Keith, is that I come from a generation where I remember when TV coverage was at best scant, when there was, the Irish Cup wasn't even, televised. You did a brilliant piece in yesterday's BelTel, reminding us of those days. I remember the days when then, let's say, the BBC, upped their coverage, and alongside that, UTV. And then I go to the next stage where BBC continued with their commitment to local sport. And let's say UTV, who loved to call themselves Your TV, did away with the Irish League, and Adrian Logan, you being one of the stars of that. And suddenly that just seemed to fall by the wayside. And I remember sort of thinking back, well, if it's my TV or your TV, then why are you taking that coverage away? And I always felt that if you could get coverage, whether it be on radio or on television, then that it would very much benefit the local game. It would benefit with regards to exposure. And it's no secret now or no surprise that maybe NIFL are trying to do this. Now, I'm putting the cards on the table. When it comes to coverage, BBC do it better than anybody else. That's the long and short of it. Whether it's a live game on BBC Two or if it's a live stream game, they do it fantastically well. I understand that they will want to maximise their viewing figures, and so they will look at maybe what games are what teams are most popular and how can they use that to everyone's advantage. But I think there's got to be some compromise. When you look at the number of games that Linfield have played at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and I know Jared Lawler, is saying we can't stand by the 3 o'clock kickoff forever and ever. Amen. But I think probably where I'm at is not throwing the baby out with the bathwater with regards to television coverage. Absolutely not. I think we should be lauding, applauding, and protecting it. But I do think that we maybe need to look a wee bit closer at the fan base, the supporters, and maybe not have as many games maybe that involve Linfield, and maybe it's shared around a little bit more. That's sort of one suggestion. I get the frustration of the Linfield supporters. Clubs, who are receiving them are delighted to see them come in their big numbers because it helps with their gate money and whatever else. And I'm sure Limavady United are probably disappointed that on this occasion there would be a big Linfield support who would have gone down. While I can see the argument, to boycott the game and also not to watch it on telly, I'm not so sure. So I get the principle very much that the Linfield supporters, are talking about, absolutely. But how it needs to be addressed, I think we need to look at that. And I think if people were to dig a little bit deeper and see the resources that are put in to the live stream games, to the games that are televised on terrestrial television. When I see what the investment that's put in, even to radio on a Saturday afternoon with Radio Ulster Sports Sound, please don't be putting that at risk, because I remember the days when we had precious little, we had nothing. When we were relying on the Ireland Saturday Night, the Ulster, to give us our breakdown of what went on where you even look at this week alone, there's going to be 3 games televised. That's some exposure. That's outstanding exposure. So let's protect that, but also let's take care of our faithful following supporters, and let's make sure that we take their needs and their situations into consideration, because the point that they make about the difficulty for supporters to get to games if it's on a Friday night, given their own daytime occupation, they going to the expense of purchasing the coach hire and all of that, and doing that with lesser numbers maybe on, then means that they ultimately can't afford to do that. There's so many logistics that are around. So this is an issue where I'm delighted that it's been brought to a head. I don't think in any way it should be brushed under the carpet, but let's sit down together and let's see how it can be resolved in the best interests of individual clubs and the collective that is the Irish League.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand where Linfield supporters clubs are coming from. I think something that maybe isn't appreciated is how much supporters clubs have been hit in the Irish League in recent times in terms of bus hire. Bus hire has gone through the roof, and so they're being squeezed from one side, and then your Saturday games are being moved to a Friday night, and it's obviously not as easy to get people to go on a bus if they're just coming out of work at 5 o'clock to go to Limavady. So I understand all of that. I do think we need to be a little bit careful. Sometimes it's well known that the broadcast deal for NFL and for the Irish Cup isn't massive money. It isn't the sort of money that they get in England or even in Scotland. But at the same time, I think it's worth more than merely just the check that each club gets at the end of the season. Because it helps bring in sponsorship deals. Sports Direct sponsor the Premiership. There's deals with like Bet McLean doing the League Cup. If you lost TV, if TV went away tomorrow, all that goes with it, because those sponsorship deals become less valuable. It also includes clubs as well, who, if you're the commercial director of a club like Larne or Glentoran, you can go to your sponsor and say, by the way, we're on TV 12 times. So that's more exposure for your brand, or hoardings around the pitch. There's so much more to it than just the check that you get at the end of the season. So I think there's a little bit of naivety there in some quarters about how valuable television coverage or media coverage in general actually is, and I would include ourselves here in terms of the coverage we give the Irish League. Like it has a value that goes beyond
the coverage that we give the Irish League. Keith, is absolutely massive. It's the bread and butter, and it is absolutely loved and valued. There's opinion, there's coverage, there's debate, it is so good.
I suppose a television deal is only, unless somebody comes in and make that isn't the BBC, I don't know, a Premier Sport or someone along those lines at Sky Sports and says, well, we're going to bid much more, then the fee isn't going to go up. It's worth whatever, £1 more than whatever the next man's prepared to pay for it. So, we aren't in a market that has a lot of competitors in it in that regard. So that's part of the reason why we don't get the massive money TV-wise that other nations do. But it is an interesting thing when you bring it all together and you see that there are plenty of fans, not just Linfield fans, but plenty of fans that are fed up with Friday night football. And I would suggest there's also quite a lot of fans who really aren't keen on what we talked about last week, which was changing the season away from the traditional August to May to help teams in Europe. And there's other little things there as well. And it feels like there's a bit of a push and a pull, or a bit of an argument going on at the moment between modernity and changing the Irish League so it brings in as much money as possible so our teams can be competitive as possible in Europe. And the traditional fan, who maybe isn't that worried about how well we do in Europe, what they want is to watch their team play on Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, as they have always done with the season running in the way it always has done. And there's maybe a bit of people becoming fed up with all this change and things shifting under their feet. What would you say to those fans who are very traditional and want the Irish League to be the same way as it was for 10 years ago, 20 years ago or more?
Well, probably I am one of those who would be in the very much the traditional camp. Although if our game is to survive and to improve, then we've got to embrace some degree of change. And I think I've used the word before and I'll use it again. It's about compromise, and it's about trying to equally meet the needs of all of the interested parties. But I do go back, Keith, the lifeblood is our supporters. We have got to take care of them, and we've got to nurture the next generation and the generation after that. But I would be very clear with the BBC head on that they are the best at what they do, and that should be looked after and protected. And in terms of written press, BelTel, we are the best.
I do hope that we see some different teams in the second half of the season. I understand Linfield are the Rangers. What they are for Irish League football is what Rangers are for Scotland or Manchester United are for England. But coming up in the second half of the season, I think the relegation battle is going to be really interesting. Glenavon are picking up. Yeah. Crusaders are down there. Carrick are down there. Bangor, Cliff, it could be really interesting the second half of the season. I want to see games between those teams on TV.
Well, that's where in terms of spreading things about, Keith, I think that's what we need to be doing. And
I don't need to see Lauren and Linfield ever again.
No, I get that, but I get why that game was picked.
Yeah, of course.
I absolutely get you. It would have been a nonsense not to have chosen that game. But there are other games, and dare I suggest, okay, it was maybe scheduled earlier in the year. But was the Linfield Carrick game, was that, you've Carrick who are obviously working very hard in the bottom half of the table, Linfield working hard in the top. But was there that level of interest that was possibly very much part and parcel of the agenda for Friday night past? So I think there needs to be maybe a little bit more thought in terms of why we're showing, who we're showing on occasions. But listen, do not be throwing the baby out with the bathwater in any way, shape or form. We craved, we asked, we literally begged for exposure down the years. We have that from, at this moment in time. Don't be losing it.
Out there.